Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. Today, I am coming live with you to share with you a tool that I use with myself and all of my clients. It's very, very simple, yet most people will not implement it, but it's very important. And so I'm really excited to share this with you. So if you are here with me live, go ahead and let me know that you're here. And if you are watching the replay, go ahead and hashtag replay. And if this is the very first time that you have ever seen me live, just let me know. I love to see all of the new faces and connect with new people. And if you feel like this information is important and you want to share it with others, please feel free to do so. I think this work is so incredibly important. And if it helps you, then it'll definitely help somebody else. So the other day, I made a post about the top 5 behaviors that repel a man and cause relationships to end after the honeymoon phase is over, between 1 and 3 months. If you have a bunch of short-term relationships, that was something that I always struggled with. I always had short-term relationships that ended after the honeymoon phase was over, typically 2 to 3 months. And it also diminishes intimacy. So these were the top 5 things. And I mentioned in this PDF that I had that when you mother a man, it completely emasculates him and doesn't allow him to treat you and view you as his queen if you are acting like his mother. So I want to chat about this today and the tool that I use with myself and my clients so that you can start implementing this as well. And so one of the top 5 behaviors is nagging. So the dictionary defines nagging as persistently annoying or finding fault with somebody. So if you're continuously asking somebody to show up for you, this isn't going to compel a man to come forward. This is going to push him away. And a lot of the times I hear like, well, he's not doing it. He's not doing it right. He's not doing it fast enough. I'm not getting what I want when I want it. And so I have to keep asking. And so that's one of the top 5 behaviors that pushes a man away and diminishes intimacy and breaks a relationship after the honeymoon phase is over. Behavior number 2 is fixing and giving unsolicited advice. A lot of the times when we give unsolicited advice to a man, the message that it sends is that we don't trust in his ability to figure it out. And a lot of men pride themselves, like the masculine prides themselves in being able to lead, to figure things out, to solve, to fix. And so if you're doing that, if you're suggesting that he needs to meditate, if you're suggesting he needs to get his health in order, if you're suggesting that he needs to do affirmations or do the work, he's not going to want to. It's not going to compel him to want to do it. We have to allow men to figure things out for themselves on their own timeline. And I know that that can be difficult to do because you're like, but I can fix this. I know the answer. But then you're not trusting him and you're leading and you're pushing and you're forcing it upon him. So that, again, is going to cause you to mother in a relationship, which ultimately diminishes intimacy. Behavior number 3, controlling. You control how he interacts with you. You control what he's doing, what he's saying. If he doesn't do something that is how you want it, when you want it, or not the proper energy, you say something about it. Maybe he didn't invite you to a trip, or maybe he didn't invite you to go somewhere with his friends, and you start getting shut down and cold, or maybe even passive aggressive, because you're wanting to control how he spends his time. Number 4 is taking the lead in the relationship. You're suggesting and initiating conversations, hanging out, asking him to meet your friends and family first. You're picking up the slack where he's not, and you're thinking, well, he's just not doing it fast enough. If he's not doing it, then I have to do it. Men pride themselves in leading, and it's in their divine masculine nature. And so when you take this lead, he's going to go into his little boy energy. He's not going to want to come forward and do this for you. The more that you mother, the more your partner becomes more like a child. And so you really want to get out of this as much as possible. So notice when you're taking the lead. And then micromanaging. Maybe you've been getting in the way of him having his own life, his own hobbies, his own friends, and you feel like his world needs to revolve around you. And when it doesn't, you try to manage his schedule, or you pick a fight, or you get passive aggressive. And so we really need to take a look at these behaviors, because these behaviors are codependent behaviors, and it doesn't get you what you want in your relationships. It diminishes intimacy. It causes men to want to look outside the relationship. It causes the relationship to break, because ultimately men do not want to be mothered. They don't want to be led. They want to do the leading. And so when you step up in that way, or when you try to control, when you try to force, when you try to nag your way into getting him to do things, he's going to pull away. And so we need to get really, really clear on our behaviors and why we're doing this, right? And it all stems from a fear of a lack of control. If we can control other people, then we'll be happy, right? And that's not the case, because we are the main character in our own story, and everyone else is the main character in their own story. And we have to be respectful of that. Okay. And so when it comes to struggling with codependency, the biggest thing that I've struggled with, and my clients have struggled with, I've seen so much over the years, is reactiveness. When we get triggered, when we get activated, automatically we start to feel reactive, and we say things we don't mean, we do things we don't mean, we self-sabotage. And what this does is because you don't feel safe and you're projecting onto the other person, then they don't feel safe and they pull away. And so a lot of the times you're like, no, they should be there for me in the moments when I'm triggered and when I'm upset and when, I'm acting this way. But think about it. If you're attacking somebody, or if you're getting attacked, are you going to want to be there for them? Probably not. And so there's a way that we do this. There's a way that we get our needs met. There's a way that we get our needs met without attacking somebody else when we get triggered. And this is called the pause. And so this is really easy to do, or it's not easy to do. It's very, very simple to do, but most people will not do it because their triggers get the best of them. And so the pause is when you get triggered, and instead of reacting, instead of going at somebody, instead of having a conversation right then and there, you pause and you sit with it. Because one of the biggest issues that I've seen with women who struggle with codependency is sitting in the void of their feelings. You want to get things figured out right then and there. You need to talk about it now. You need to get it all out in the open now. And that's not always the best decision right then, because I like to say, when you can't see yourself clearly in a pot of boiling water, which means when you are pissed, when you are activated, when you're triggered, you cannot see situations clearly, which means we're not going to behave in a way that is going to create closeness in the relationship. We're going to create breaks that we're going to have to repair from. And so if we want long-lasting, healthy relationships, we have to learn to control our emotions. We have to take control of our triggers, our emotions, and our actions that come after that. And so this is what I've seen has created longevity and happiness and joy and intimacy in a relationship. We don't want our partners walking on eggshells. We don't constantly want our partners thinking that they can't do anything right. If we're constantly complaining about what they're doing, what they're not doing, they're not going to want to come forward. They're always going to think like, well, I can't do anything right. So why am I even going to bother? And I see this a lot, when in the beginning, like when we rush relationships, when there's early attachment, there's this phase where you guys are spending a lot of time together. There's love bombing. You're really caught up in one another. And ultimately, you self-abandon in those moments. You ditch out on your friends. You ditch out on your responsibilities. And what happens is that is not sustainable. We always are looking for longevity and building a healthy, happy, stable foundation in relationship. And so when relationships are rushed, you don't get the opportunity to build that stable foundation. And so within that 3-month period, you get attached really, really quickly. And then because you have this fear of intimacy, because all codependents have a fear of intimacy, is you start to self-sabotage by trying to control your partner. What they're doing, what they're saying, how they're saying it, who they're with, when they hang out with you, when they talk to you, how they do things. giving them advice, telling them how they should behave, all these things coming from this place of control. And it's self-sabotaging because you're creating space between you and your partner. You're not letting them have that autonomy. You're not letting them have their own space, their own being. You think that they should behave how you want them to behave. A lot of what I've heard from women is, well, I would never do that, or I would do this, so why aren't they doing that? I would never think like that. I would never say that. If I was in that position, I would do this. We have to recognize that, again, they are the main character in their own story, and we have to be respectful of that. So just because you would do or say something or not do or not say something doesn't mean that that's how they should be, right? And so when we're activated and when we're triggered, we have to allow ourselves to have this pause before we say anything, allow ourselves to sit in this void. We don't need it figured out right this second. We need to sit with our feelings in those moments. Why am I getting triggered? What about this? Is this valid? Is this a him problem? Is this a we problem? Is this a me problem? We always have to ask ourselves that, because otherwise we're putting a lot of blame, we're projecting onto these other people. And that's just not fair. And it's going to create a break in the relationship, typically after 3 months. And so if you've experienced that in your relationships where you're like, oh my gosh, I keep having these breaks after the 3-month period where we break up, we stop seeing each other, or they ghost out, we want to look at why that is. Is there a point where you're rushing the relationship, having early attachment, and then self-sabotage starts to set in where you need your partner to be a certain way all the time for you? And so this pause, this can go anywhere from a day to a couple of days to really just get your mind right and to recognize it's safe to sit in your feelings. We don't need the other person right then and there to fix it for us. Their reassurance isn't going to fix it for us. The things that they say, a lot of the times when we go to them, what they say makes it worse. And so we have to be able to self-soothe. We have to be able to create that pause between the trigger and the action. Okay. And so whether that is a day or a couple of days, sitting in that feeling, allowing yourself to have this feeling, self-soothing, because a lot of the times what you'll realize is that after you're not so triggered, after you've self-soothed, after you're no longer in fight or flight, you see the situation totally differently. And so the other day, there was something that made me uncomfortable. My boyfriend and I were talking, and there's something that made me uncomfortable and insecure. And so in that moment, it was something that I kind of like reflected on, and I was like, I feel a little insecure about this. And so I allowed myself some time to think. It took me 3 days because I don't have conversations about my feelings or about the relationship or about issues over text. If anything, it needs to be either in person first and foremost, or if you cannot be in person, then over the phone. But never, ever do this in text. I cannot stress this enough. We need to be able to sit with our feelings long enough to where we can say, hey, I really want to talk about this in person, or you don't bring it up until you talk about it in person or over the phone, depending on the situation. And so when I was having this experience with my boyfriend the other day, it was on Sunday. I allowed myself 3 days to think about it, 3 days to self-soothe. It wasn't a major trigger. It was just kind of like, I feel a little insecure about that, and I don't want to close my heart off. So I know that we're going to talk about this. I just want to make sure that I say things appropriately. I want to get my point across without blaming, attacking, or belittling, emasculating, whatever the case may be. And so yesterday we had 5-minute conversation. It was solved. And I said, hey, I feel a little bit insecure about this, and this. And I didn't make him wrong. I didn't say you did this. I didn't say this. I didn't say that. All I said was, I feel a little insecure about this thing. Within 5 minutes, he gave me, I didn't ask him for reassurance. I didn't ask him to explain himself. I didn't ask him for anything. In 5 minutes, he told me everything that I needed to hear. And it's because I brought it to him in a way that allowed him to come forward and be my hero rather than me scolding him like a mother to her child, to her little boy. And that makes all the difference. And when we got done with that conversation, he was like, I really appreciate you sharing this with me. And I'm so glad that you didn't jump to conclusions. And I was like, I don't jump to conclusions. I don't do that. I used to do that, but I don't do that anymore because I know that it breaks the relationship. It causes bigger, wounds to repair. And if I can control myself, if I can control my triggers, self-soothe, and allow myself to get in a headspace to where I can have a empowered conversation in my Empowered Academy and in my VIP coaching, I teach my clients empowered communication because communication is the foundation for a healthy relationship. If you don't have communication, then what do you have? You don't want to spend an entire relationship being misunderstood and having fights and constantly having to try to repair. And so if you can sit with those feelings and ask yourself, why am I getting triggered? What story am I telling? Is this a me problem or is this a we problem? Because a lot of the times we find that it's really just an us problem that we have to deal with. That doesn't mean that we can't bring it to our partner, but that doesn't mean that they have to fix it. And I even said that in our conversation. I was like, this isn't a you problem, this is a me problem. And I'm not asking you to change anything. And by just saying that, it gave him so much space. It gave him so much safety. If somebody doesn't feel safe coming to you with issues, if somebody doesn't feel safe in conversation with you when you're triggered, and that doesn't mean that you do this perfectly all the time. We're talking about for the most part. They will continue to come forward to you and they'll feel safe talking to you about things and they'll want to have that emotional intimacy with you. But if you're constantly blowing up over everything all the time, that's going to that's going to push somebody away. And you can say this for yourself. If somebody was constantly coming at you, making you feel like everything you were doing was wrong, or they blew up at you every time they made an assumption or they got triggered, it would not make you feel safe. And so when we can create safety within ourselves, when we can handle our own triggers, when we can handle our emotions, when we're strong on the inside and soft on the outside, that is the fucking key. Like that is the key. That is what brings men closer to us. If we can feel strong on the inside to be able to handle our triggers, handle our emotions, handle the ugliest parts of ourselves, and be soft on the outside and let somebody in and being able to have, healthy, effective conversation with them, that's so powerful. But a lot of the time what's happening is we're hard on the outside and all mushy and not strong. We're weak on the inside. So we have this outward barrier that's tough and mean and harsh when we get triggered. And it's because we have so much, unsafe feelings within our body. And so by exercising this muscle, this will change your relationships. This will change your life with your parents, with your siblings, with your children, with your partner, with your spouse, your husband, your wife, your girlfriend, whoever it is. This will change your relationship because you cannot see clearly when emotions are high, intelligence is low. We have to be able to get our emotions under control and be able to be with them and exercise that muscle of being in the void, not needing it to be fixed right now, not needing to get away from the emotions right now, but just being able to pause and allowing ourselves to get out of the trigger, allowing ourselves to be there for ourselves and not fixing it ourselves, but allowing us to just heal and then going to our partner instead of expecting our partner to just fix it, drop everything, be at our beck and call. That's not always realistic and it's not always healthy. That's more of a trauma bond where you are very enmeshed. We need to be able to recognize that they are their own person. Even when you're in a relationship, you're your own person. And your emotions are your responsibility first and foremost. And having your partner soothe you and be there for you is the cherry on top. And they will come forward if you allow them to be there for you without attacking them, belittling them, emasculating them, pointing the finger, blaming, saying you should be doing this. Nobody feels good when that happens. When you say, well, nobody else is going to do it, so I have to do it, or you're not doing it, so I have to come forward. That's not compelling anybody to come near you. That's repelling people. And so you want to be this magnetic person where you're authentic and real about your emotions, but you handle them with class. You handle them in a way that it's like, wow, I want to be around that person more. When she's upset, I want to be her hero. How cool would that be that your man would want to come and be your hero when you're upset? How good would that feel? And not because he should, or because he's being blamed or, shamed or emasculated, but because you just said, hey, babe, I was triggered the other day and I took some time to sit with myself, and these are really the feelings that are coming up for me. And you just stop there. And you don't try to tell him what he needs to do differently. And you just let him come forward. Because a lot of the times, if they have the opportunity, they will. Healthy masculine men want to be your hero. They want to make you feel good. They want you to be happy. But they can't do that when there's attack or when there's erratic emotion all the time. Like I said, this doesn't mean that you have to be perfect. Perfection is not possible. It's not something we should strive for. But what we do want to strive for is emotional mastery and emotional intelligence. You want people to feel safe with you. And the only way people can feel safe with you is if you feel safe with yourself. So anytime you get triggered, practice this pause. Do this for yourself and allow yourself to not create stories about why this is happening. That's a lot of what we do. We go in these downward spirals of creating these stories of, oh my gosh, this person said this, it triggered me, then it means this. Everything only has the meaning that we give it, and you're catastrophizing things over and over and over again, which is going to create more of the trigger, which is going to obviously create more pain, anger, resentment, all the things. So if you can recognize this trigger without creating a story about yourself or your partner, allowing yourself to be with the emotions, allowing yourself to self-soothe, be there for yourself as you would a small child when they're upset, and letting your partner get the parts of you that allow him to come closer. So this doesn't mean stifle your feelings. It doesn't mean to pretend like everything's okay when it's not. It just means effectively communicating by pausing before you say something that's going to ultimately damage the relationship. I really do. I've seen this so much. I've been guilty of this myself. I would feel triggered by somebody, and then I would get mean and cold and nasty and passive aggressive. And then I wondered why I couldn't get what I wanted in love and why I'd push people away. Healthy masculine men, they want a woman who can be in touch with their emotions and be able to communicate them without being belittled. And that's how you just make people feel comfortable with you and want to come forward and want to spend time. You're not abandoning yourself. You're just learning how to have a healthy, emotionally mature conversation by sitting with your feelings first and getting clear on what's going on. Because a lot of the times, like I said, we'll see that it's really a story that we've created rather than something that's actually happening. We create these stories based on wounds that we've had. And sometimes you'll notice your trigger is showing you that somebody's not right for you. But we've got to be able to communicate effectively to have healthy loving, strong relationships that last. It's very, very powerful. So if you feel like this resonated with you, I would love to know. If you feel like you get reactive, you get triggered easily, if you feel like you need to start implementing this, go ahead and let me know in the comments how you're going to start implementing this and how you've seen this show up for you. And I promise you, within just a week of doing this, you're going to see such a difference, whether it's with your kids, with your spouse, with your parents, whoever it is, it will make a difference. So allow yourself this space. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye, everyone.